And I had to be strong when I did not feel strong. Trauma breaks the mind-body connection.
Ironically, you and I have this horrible thing in common. I too was hit by a car.
Like what it does when you feel confident in your body, in your physicality, it affects how you show up and how you interact and what you think you're worthy of. So to have self-confidence is to trust yourself fully. When we ask for help, when we make ourselves vulnerable and we open up to another person, that's one of the ways that we build trust. Vulnerability is a trust builder in a relationship. To look at the proof in your past of when you've been capable that you didn't think you could do a thing and you did a thing. Remind yourself, I am capable of doing hard things.
Welcome to Loud and Lifted. Today's conversation is one of those episodes where the name of the podcast feels almost too perfect. My guest is Rachel Druckenmiller, and she's known for helping people get unmuted, to stop holding back, use their voice, and show up more fully in their lives, work, and leadership. But today, we're taking a different path into that conversation. 6 years ago, Rachel was hit by a Chevy Silverado while out on for a run and suffered a spinal fracture. And while she was physically recovering, she was also navigating something much deeper: fear, pain, isolation, and the loss of trust in her body. What I loved about this conversation is that Rachel doesn't package resilience as this neat, shiny thing. Her rebuilding was slow. It was emotional. It took support, consistency, and eventually it took lifting. For Rachel, working out became more than movement. It became a way to rebuild confidence, repair the mind-body connection, and prove to herself that she was strong, capable, and powerful. So let's get into it. Welcome to Loud and Lifted. Rachel, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. This loud and lifted, I feel like we're going to give people a new perspective on those two words by the time we're done today.
I know. I mean, this couldn't be a better match to talk about getting loud and lifted. And of course, the irony is you're known for getting people unmuted, which is such a great word. But today, we're going to take a little bit of a different angle and a path to this conversation because it's going to be personal. It's about you and how you really had a life-changing experience 6 years ago that changed how you approach life, and I'm sure how you continue to get unmuted. So why don't we start there? Why don't you take us back to 6 years ago and your story?
So it's May 3rd of 2020, and everyone can remember some version of what their life was like in that mode, right? We're washing our groceries from the outsides of the bags and Lysoling avocados, and I'm working remotely and I'm trying to remember the last time I wore pants with buttons. Like, I'm sure that was
yes.
that moment. My husband was teaching elementary school phys ed from our basement on Zoom. And I was about 8 or 9 months after having left my corporate job, and 85% of my business, which was at the time only speaking in person at events, had been totally decimated. And I was having to reinvent myself. So that's like the context of what was happening. And so naturally, my husband and I needed some stress relief. And so we thought, let's go for a run. We're about a half mile from our house and we're heading up a hill. We're in conversation with each other, talking. And as we approached the intersection, there was a white Chevy Silverado pickup truck stopped in the right turn lane. And the light was red and the cross signal was white. And my husband goes across and I'm a few steps behind him. And then as I'm getting ready to cross in front of the truck, I'm in the center of it and I sense in my periphery that it's starting to move. And if anyone is a runner or you've been out in a situation like that, you usually turn around, you kind of get the driver's attention, they stop. They realize what they're doing. So I turn my body to face the truck and I put my hands on the hood and like I'm, Superman, I'm going to stop the truck. And I'm 5'4", highly unlikely. And he doesn't see me. And so I come up off the ground, probably 2 to 3 feet, and I am like glued to the grill of this truck. And he drives into the intersection with me hanging off his car. Mm. I don't have a conscious memory of that, but that's the only thing that could have happened because I wasn't dragged. So I had to be lifted. Speaking of loud and lifted in a way that no one wants to be. No. That was not intentional, but here we are. And he realizes eventually in the center of the intersection that there's a person on his truck. And so he slams on the brakes and I flew off. And I landed really hard on my feet and I stumbled backwards. The momentum, I was at the crest of a hill. And so I stumbled backwards. And as I hit the ground, it happened in slow motion. Like the first thing I remember was being sideways falling to the ground in slow motion. That's the first memory I have after starting to cross the street. And I felt like I got the wind knocked out of me. I couldn't breathe. And I look up and I just lift my head and I look up and I see my husband standing frozen on the other side of the intersection. He saw the whole thing happen.
Ugh.
And he runs over. I start screaming and he runs over to me and takes me to the sidewalk. Strangers in masks appear. Someone holds my hand. An ambulance shows up. They put me in a neck brace and in a board. Take me into the ambulance. My husband can't come with me because of COVID protocols. So I go
Oh my gosh.
to the hospital by myself. And I'm being, transferred like a piece of meat. It's so weird when you get there and they're in this trauma room and there's all these blinking lights and beeping noises and people coming in and out. And it's very chaotic. And they do all these tests. And after a couple hours, the radiologist comes in and says, so there's a spinal fracture. And I just, I just started sobbing. And I think it was the first time he'd seen a person cry based on his reaction. And he said, do you want me to call your husband? And walked out of the room and left me alone.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't think I've ever felt so alone in my life as I did in that moment. And terrified, terrified. I was 35 years old, obviously active. And now I have a spinal fracture. And I just didn't know what was going to follow. But the weeks and months and years that followed that were the hardest of my life. And yet I believe that I would not be where I am now, doing what I'm doing now, the way that I'm doing it with the perspective I have if that hadn't happened.
Oh my gosh. It's so wild. And it's so crazy that I just can, as you talk about this moment of being alone and then not knowing what your future is, right? Like, how does that impact walking, just everyday life? And what were their sort of like expectations of you in the beginning? What were they saying? Like, oh, we can get you to do this. Like, what was sort of the goal as you were recovering?
Well, I mean, the initial goal was I had what's called a compression fracture. So it's essentially like imagine one of your vertebrae is like a tin can. It got scrunched.
Oh,
yeah, really nice visual. But that's what happened, which was actually a gift because I didn't need back surgery. So if it had been a compound fracture or something had happened to the discs, like it could have been worse. So kind of objectively speaking, I had what the neurosurgery PA said is the best kind of fracture.
oh gosh.
I didn't know there was a best kind, but I'm glad to have it. And really, it was just a matter of is gradually increasing mobility. With an injury like that, the goal is like, let's get you to a place of sort of baseline mobility and managing the pain. For most people, that's the expectation of recovering from a spinal fracture. And for the first year or so, at least 2.5, 3.5 years after the accident, that's really all I focused on doing. But when you go through something like that, you are so scared to move your body because you're afraid you're going to hurt it again. And so what it did is that in the wake of that, I mean, I had muscle spasms that would wake me up at 3:00 in the morning, and then I'd have to go on Zoom and give a presentation to hundreds of people about building hope and resilience in the midst of uncertainty in a back brace.
Ugh.
Like, because I had no choice. Like
Right.
I was a primary earner. I had to figure out how to make all this work. I did not take a day off. Like I just kept going. I was presenting 48 hours after getting hit by a truck. And it was a really difficult season, but that was essentially the prognosis is like, let's get you back to baseline and let's manage the pain.
So when you're going through this, what are people not seeing from the outside, right? Like you're putting on your smile, you're getting on Zoom, like what was actually happening and how are you getting through that?
Well, the hardest part is if you think about how isolated you were during the pandemic. Okay. So now you're isolated and you are immobile. Like the one thing most people had during the pandemic was their mobility.
Right.
And that was something that was taken away from me. And that was one of the hardest parts is because people didn't get to see the day to day. Visiting people was, potentially dangerous. So people would drop off meals. Some people would stop by, drop off a gift. Everyone's in masks coming by. I mean, it was just a very odd time. And I think that made it even harder because my husband and I were now super isolated too. So he has to do everything. He's taking me to doctor's appointments at least twice a week. I was in physical therapy for almost a year. I couldn't drive for 4 months, no bending, lifting, or twisting. And so nobody saw any of that or, me getting up at 3:00 in the morning with a muscle spasm, me sleeping. I slept in an electric recliner in my living room for 3 months. Like I couldn't even sleep with my husband. And so he felt isolated too. I mean, there was all that was happening. Having to manage the fact that I was resurrecting a business that had barely gotten off the ground and had to show up with energy I did not have. at a time when everybody else metaphorically felt like they got hit by a truck.
Sure.
And I had to be strong when I did not feel strong for other people. But I do believe it helped me be stronger for myself because I got to practice the very thing I was teaching as I was going through my own experience of having to build resilience inside of myself.
And the irony is that's what you're saying. They're talking to people. So I can't imagine what's going through your head when you're talking about resilience and getting through. And of course, the world is in the craziest place that it's ever been. And you're still just trying to show up. Like that's so when did you hit this point that something needed to change? And you thought obviously you're being resilient, you're showing up every day, which is half the battle. But what changed in you that you're like, I need to double down and I need to do something different?
Well, I mean, part of it was a shift of kind of energetically first is that I realized I needed an outlet in the wake of the accident to do something to express something in me because I couldn't express myself with movement. I wasn't free in my movement. So I had to find some other way to feel free. And for me, singing was always a way that I did that growing up. And so I started taking virtual voice lessons. And then after a couple of years of doing that, work with a producer, do a thing I didn't know that I could do and write and record and release my first song. And that came out January 23. So I started to, I think, build some internal momentum. Like an internal shift started to happen when I started making music. I released 3 songs that year. And about summer of 2023, so 3.5, just over 3 years after the accident, I had the sense that I was feeling frustrated with how stuck I felt in my body. I felt weak. I felt scared. I didn't feel sure of myself. And the thing I've learned is that, when you don't feel confident in one area of your life, when you feel weak and kind of powerless in one area of your life, it can kind of ripple out into other areas. And I didn't want to feel that way. So I'm on Instagram one day and I see a post of a friend of mine with her personal trainer. And I reach out to this person, get connected to the trainer. I tell her my situation. I say, I haven't lifted weights in years. I'm scared to move anything because I'm going to hurt myself again. I don't have confidence in my body right now. It wasn't even like I'd gained some weight. It wasn't even like a weight loss thing. It was just like, I'm tired of feeling weak. And so I got together with her for our first session. And I mean, I'm doing, tricep kickbacks with 5 pounds, maybe 3 at first. And my arm is shaking. I'm doing deadlifts with 10-pound weights in each hand. And I'm like nervous about coming up. I mean, there were moments where I cried in the sessions that I had because I was just, it was such a big ask of my body to be able to do these things, And so it was really scary, but her motto, her name's Allison Siegel, my trainer. And her motto is, yes, you can. Yes, you can. And so I'd have a moment where I'd be like, I don't know. And I felt like she served as this container for me where I trusted her. And so sometimes I talk about borrowing other people's belief in us. And I felt like because I trusted her and her skill set and her training and her knowledge of how to support me, I started to kind of borrow her belief in me. As she said, yes, I know you think you can't do this. I'm not going to ask you to do something that's going to be unsafe. And I know that you can do this. And over time, I saw her twice a week. And then I started getting in a routine. We switched over a bedroom in our house, converted it into a home gym, bought weights. Like I knew I had to change my life if I was going to commit to doing this. And that was the beginning of how it started to shift.
So in the beginning, did you ever have that self-doubt creep back in? And you had this like very real reason to be scared or say, I can't do this or I shouldn't push myself. So did that happen, especially in the early days of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe this is too much. And how'd you get through that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was I shouldn't push myself. But if I didn't have her, I wouldn't be where I am. So again, having her as, I find that as we kind of borrow that belief from others, there's a strength that builds inside of ourselves. And I think to myself, if she thinks I can do this, if she's saying it's safe for me to do this, it's safe for me to do this. So that was kind of the beginning of the mental shift of sometimes we need to listen to somebody else who has expertise that we don't and has a perspective that we don't and has experience that we don't because she's helped other people through injuries. She often works with people postpartum. So they're really not trusting their bodies. They really feel like something has taken over their bodies. And that is her area of expertise, is working in that space. And so for me, coming in, she was relatively new to doing this as her full-time job. She had been a dental hygienist. And so she's told me in the years since we've been working together almost 3 years now, she's told me, she's like, you helped me. The way you responded to me gave me confidence.
Oh my
Which
gosh.
I didn't know at the time. So it's
Right.
like a mutual exchange that was happening when we see ourselves supporting another, we see that person rising, that gives us confidence that we know what we're doing, which then helps us to help that person more going forward.
And you know what I love about that also is that you both admitted that to each other, because so many times that happens and we don't acknowledge that. So that person doesn't even know that they had this impact. So you both sharing that probably just helped to even elevate that even more, that like, okay, wow, you helped me too. Like it's just that, it's that connection and that mutual relationship that we have to be intentional about talking about, and giving people the credit. Essentially, I think it just helps to grow that even more.
Mm-hmm.
So how did lifting essentially repair that mind body connection for you? Like, right? You're thinking
Mm-hmm.
about, you said you weren't doing to lose weight. You're doing obviously to get strong, and you were in a very unique situation. But how does that tie into, or how did it tie into for you, like that mind body, the confidence, and how did that all come together?
Well, I'd say that one of the first catalysts for even realizing that I was feeling powerless, which was the first kind of thing that got me to think about, okay, I want to change stuff here, is when I was seeing a therapist, a somatic therapist, about 6 months after the accident. And so somatic therapists focus on restoring the mind body connection. So I had the support of this person who understood that trauma gets trapped in the body. And she was the first person who was helping me with the post-traumatic stress that I had from the accident. I had PTSD, hyper reactive, and my alert and alarm system was just like blaring. If I was walking on the sidewalk, and sometimes the sidewalk drops, like it's uneven, maybe 2 inches. If I would walk on a sidewalk and it would drop like that, I would have to stop. My body would get so activated because what it did is it reignited the same thing that happened in the accident when I landed unevenly. And so I had to tell my brain, like, this is not that. And I would have to stop in the middle of the walk with my husband, sometimes cry, and gather myself. I mean, that's how like fragile I felt in the months, and even within the first 18 months after the accident, I would be hyper reactive when something like that would happen. So imagine going from that to like, no, you're lifting heavy weights. I mean, that's ridiculous. So I see this therapist. I'm laying on her like massage table, and she's pressing along the outside of my leg from the outside of my hip to my knee. And she's asking me, she's saying, what are you noticing in your body? Because often we disconnect, most of us, whether we've been through physical trauma or not, most of us disconnect our mind from our body. And I said, I feel like my body's resisting you. And she said, oh, like you want to push me away? I don't know. I just feel like tension in my chest as you're pressing on my leg. And she says, all right, I want you to sit up and push me. So she's probably in her mid 60s. So she stands on the side of the table in a sparring position. And she says, sit up and push me away. So I sit up, I like nudge her. And she goes, no, push me enough to make me move. So bizarre. First visit. I pushed her like 4 times. And then after a few times of doing that, I just feel this surge of emotion in my body. And I lay back down, and I bring my hands to my face, and I start full body sobbing. Like my body is shaking, hyperventilating, sobbing for like 2 to 3 minutes. And she just let me do it. It came out of nowhere. And she goes, what are you noticing? And I said, I wanted to push the truck away and I couldn't. And so that feeling of powerlessness had been trapped in my body. And that's what trauma does, right? Trauma breaks the mind-body connection. It gets you to disconnect because it's almost in self-preservation, self-protection mode. And so when you start lifting weights, what that does is it restores a sense of stability, of strength, of capability, of empowerment, because your body is doing something challenging. You are lifting a heavy thing. And when you're doing it in a way where you feel safe and protected, which is for me the container that my trainer provided, you start to restore these 2 things start to reconnect again, the mind-body connection, because you're focused on your breath, you're focused on the intentional movement, you're focused on that present moment. When you are lifting, you cannot be distracted or you'll hurt yourself. And so gradually over time, it started to rebuild and restore that mind-body connection, and actually started to reduce the reactivity that I had emotionally, because I'm in the spot where my body, the new truth, the new reality is my body is capable. My body is strong. My body can lift heavy things. My body can do hard things. And I am my body. So I can do hard things. I am strong. I am capable. I am powerful. And that was really what started to shift things for me.
And, you have this obviously very tragic, unfortunate situation that happened that then you had the opportunity to grow and evolve that way. But this can be the case for people in a lot less of a severe situation, whether it's just having that low confidence or needing to build up themselves. Like this works too, right? Like it's not just the extreme of having this physical issue that you had to overcome, but this is for anybody.
Yeah, you don't have to wait till you get hit by a truck to start lifting weights. I mean, please don't. Please
Please
don't
don't.
let that be the catalyst.
I mean, and ironically, you and I have this horrible thing in common. I too was hit by a car in my 20s. Thankfully, I did not have any spinal injuries. Just, I didn't see it coming, so I was very bruised. But, I think about the things that you take for granted too, right? In that situation, I remember that I was in my early 20s at the time, and I remember being like, holy cow, like I still can go for a run. I can go to the gym. I can do whatever it is. And you have this new appreciation for things that you take for granted, which I think also tie all this back together where it changes your outlook. And you don't want people to have these tragic situations happen to them to change their outlook. It can be small things that you're like, you know what? I want to be better. I want to build my confidence. I want to do things differently. I want to have that optimistic outlook and be resilient. And again, to your point, you don't have to wait to be, do not recommend being hit by a car to get to that point. But, this has elevated you into this whole other level. And so how did this impact you outside the gym, right? Like obviously you're showing up at the gym, you're more confident, you're lifting heavier weights every month or whatever it is. But how did you start to see this play out then in the rest of your life?
So interestingly, people want a quick fix to things, and they think if I just start doing this thing in 2 months, I'm going to be beach body ready. It took me a good year. I sort of was just trying to build trust within myself to be able to trust my trainer and to then gradually start to trust myself to start lifting heavy things. The first year was just sort of almost like getting a little bit more to baseline, to be honest with you. I didn't notice the most significant shift in my body physically until 2 years in of doing this consistently, of moving, yoga, lifting, walking, spinning, one of those every day. One of those every day, because when you lose the ability to move, you realize that it is a gift to be able to move your body. It is not like, it's such a chore. Like what I would have done when I was in a back brace to be able to go for a walk.
Right.
And for someone listening right now that like, if you are able-bodied, the message for me is like, do what you can with what you have. Like maybe you do have some limitation. Maybe you do have something that doesn't allow you to move as freely as you would like to. But what can you do? Like what can you do with what you have? And so what started to happen for me is as I started to notice my body changing, my goal was never to lose weight. I lost weight. I mean, I think I've lost at this point 16 or 17 pounds and just about as many inches on my body, like 5 inches on my hips.
Crazy.
I've always been hippie. I'm a pear, I didn't even know that was possible. Like I literally I'm in the best, I'm almost 42 years old. I'm in the best shape of my life that I've ever been in. It has taken an insane amount of hard work, dedication, discipline, commitment, consistency, incremental increases over time. What it has done for me is it changes the way I carry myself. Like when your core is strong and your back's strong, your glutes are strong, you walk into a room differently. You absolutely, the energy that you bring into a space shifts. I had someone say to me, I interviewed her before a keynote. I do that with people. I interview them before keynotes, get their stories. I met this woman at a reception the night before the conference, a month after interviewing her. And she goes, oh, I kind of thought you'd be more like Taylor Swift. And I was like, what do you mean by that? She goes, you have like main character energy. I just thought you'd be taller because of like the energy. I was like, I've never heard someone say that, but I'm definitely shorter than Taylor Swift, but and different in a lot of other ways. But in her experience, like this feeling of being a bit larger than life, like what it does when you feel confident in your body, in your physicality, it affects how you show up and how you interact and what you think you're worthy of. I mean, it changes how you dress. It changes so much. And then all of that has a ripple effect because then when you're walking into a room, like you deserve to be there and you're wearing something that makes you feel fantastic. And someone tells you that you have Michelle Obama arms, which is very flattering. It's not about even taking it in and being like, I'm so great. It's just about like, gosh, I know how hard I've worked to get to this spot. And I'm going to walk into this room like I deserve to be in there. And like, I have something to offer and that my presence matters. And when you do that, it has a positive contagion and affects like other people, they respond to that energy in a different way than if you walk into a room apologetically. And so I've like magnetized different people and opportunities to myself over the past particularly year or so as a result of having experienced this shift in my body physically. Because what I've learned, I know we talk about confidence a lot. I learned something recently on a podcast that the root of the word confidence is confidere, and confidere in Latin means to trust fully. So to have self-confidence is to trust yourself fully.
I never knew that. That's so obvious.
And when you trust yourself fully, I mean, you become unstoppable. When you're not second guessing and apologizing and shrinking, or when you're not doing that, when you're showing up unapologetically and boldly and powerfully, I mean, like, watch out, world. And that's how I feel about where I am in my life right now. And it feels really, really good.
Oh, that's so good. I love that. And, sometimes I think people get hung up on like the vanity piece of an appearance or working out or caring about, getting your hair done, whatever it is but it's about making you feel good. It has nothing to do with the vanity piece. But when you feel good, you're going to show up. You're going to have that main character. I love that main character energy. And that's the part that we have to focus on. Like, what are those things that make you feel good, that are going to make you feel confident, that you walk into the room with that power? And to your point, like I was sitting here, I'm like, I need to sit up straighter. What am I doing? Just the bad part about sitting on my little podcast couch. But yeah, that's all part of it. And that's all so important. So the irony of that your work was about getting unmuted and the resilience. How did that change then how you communicate and how you show up and what you're sharing with people? I mean, the story is one piece of that, right? But you've literally changed how you show up and who you are. So how does that show up in your work, and how does that even change what unmuted means to you?
I would say, for me, a lot of it is I've started to think bigger about my life in general. And when you build confidence in one area of your life, it tends to ripple into others. And so I feel stronger in this area. So now when an opportunity comes along over here that previously I would have doubted myself or held back or not trusted myself, I walk into that opportunity like, well, actually, why not? Like, maybe I could do that. Maybe that is possible. And so I started to think about, well, what are other ways I need to learn to trust myself? And we learn to trust ourselves by doing things consistently, by honoring the commitments we make to ourselves. That's how we learn to trust anyone, frankly, by doing what we say we're going to do. And so I thought, well, what other areas of my life do I want to have more confidence in that I can kind of transfer this over to? And one was performance for singing. I did not grow up as a performer. I did not grow up singing in front of people. I have, to date, only dozens of, not in the hundreds, dozens of times in the lower dozens, under 50, sung full songs in front of people with accompaniment live. And I thought, well, I want to get better at that. And I asked Leroy, the producer I work with, how do I get more confident performing in front of people? And he's like, by performing in front of people.
Oh,
shocking. So now I've started to do more of that. And I made a commitment to do monthly open mic nights with my husband. And we've been doing that since December. He plays guitar.
Oh,
and I sing. And so I've now when I get on stage, let me kind of build that rep. Let me start to build trust in that area by honoring that commitment. And then more recently, a friend of mine, I shared a dream with him about wanting to maybe expand singing by singing the national anthem at a minor league baseball game, maybe at some point, perhaps, maybe, possibly, eventually a major league game, maybe someday, years down the road. He heard that as, oh, you want to sing at a Major League Baseball game this year. Got it. And so he used to play Major League Baseball and orchestrated a bunch of things behind the scenes. And now I'm singing the national anthem at the Orioles-Yankees game on August 20th.
Stop it. Oh my gosh. That's so exciting. Congratulations. And to what will be a sold out game, I'm sure, since
no
the Yankees
pressure
are in town. No pressure.
But I'm working on it. Like, I'm practicing, I'm rehearsing, I work with a vocal coach. So again, how do you build confidence? Another way is by getting in reps. So I'm working with a vocal coach every week, and we're troubleshooting, and we're imagining, and we're experimenting with things, and we're setting the intention. What's the intention when I get out there is to sing every line joyfully. Like, that's the intention. So when we're practicing together, all right, how do I activate joy in this moment before I even sing the line? How do I connect to that intention? And how do I get so many reps in of doing this that I start to trust myself and I trust my voice that my body's not going to betray me. My voice isn't going to crack. It's not going to cut out. And then so when I walk out to that microphone on that field in front of tens of thousands of people, that I trust myself and I trust my body to show up and perform in the moment because we've done it so many times before. I've built that trust to the point where when I get out there, I'm not like wondering. I'm not like, oh, what's going to happen? It's just another rep. And it's another expression of trusting myself. So I don't think if this had happened 18 months ago, if someone's like, you're going to sing the national anthem in a Major League Baseball game, I would have said, no, I am not. But here we are now. And I'm like, you know what?
You're like, let's go.
Here's the opportunity. I like to say I'm not an imposter. I'm in process. So I could look at myself. I've only sung the national anthem once to 200 people in a field on an overcast Friday at a small town in Maryland, which is true. That's the most people I've ever sung the national anthem. That's the most people I've ever sung like a full song of anything to. And now I'm doing this. And so I'm gonna be loud and lifted out there. I'm really excited about it.
So you've mentioned your trainer, you've mentioned your husband, you've mentioned your vocal coach. So I'm getting onto the trend that you didn't do this alone. How important were the people around you? And did you have to like ask for help? I mean, people are obviously coming to you, but like, how did that work? And how did you get that support around you to get where you are today?
So I had practice when I was 32 years old, 2017. I was the director of well-being at my company and I burned out and got mono. I mean, like really sick. Epstein-Barr virus, which is an acute form of mono. I lost my voice. I had no energy. The people paid me and hired me for my energy. I didn't have it. I went through this dark night of the soul identity crisis. Who am I if I don't have my voice? Who am I if I don't have this energy? Am I ever going to get this back? I mean, I was really scared. So I was in 2017 when I was still in my corporate job. And what I learned in the wake of that experience was how isolated I had been through my own doing. Because for so much of my life, I had believed, well, sort of if it's to be, it's up to me. And I just need to figure this out. And if I ask for help, people are going to think I can't handle it. They're going to think I am lesser. They're going to think I'm not as great as I want them to think I am. They're going to see it as a sign of weakness and incompetence. And I deep in my bones believed that. When I burned out and was so sick and had to change my schedule at work, and I mean, I had to change something. It was, I hit this inflection point where it was like, you can keep doing this and you're going to drive yourself into the ground and your life's going to fall apart. It kind of started to a little bit like, or you can make a change. So it's this catalyst. It's this moment I talk about it as the void in this framework I teach people. The void, what's the moment of just something's got to give. What if it didn't have to be this way? And I started reaching out to people. I started asking for help. First at work, I started opening up to friends. I'd never really been super outwardly vulnerable with people. I didn't really let people in. I also wasn't a very good friend. Like I also wouldn't, reach out to and follow up with people or check in on them. I was so self-consumed with just all my own life that I was disconnected and very isolated. And I realized how lonely I was, how outwardly successful, but how internally isolated and disconnected I felt. And I didn't want to feel that way anymore. And so I started letting people into my life. I got this might sound so ridiculous, but I think it was probably 32, 33, maybe 33, was the first time I was ever on a group text with a group of peers.
Oh, interesting.
Which some people might think like group text, and I mute a lot of them now. They not those friends, but like if I'm in a group text, I'm like, oh, it's too much. But I'd never been included. I got invited to a girls' weekend with like 6 women that I go to church with. And they were all a group and they sort of let me into their group and they invited me. I had never been on a girls' weekend with a group of my friends before at 33.
Interesting.
And so what started to happen is that foundation was getting laid over those years. So when the accident happened and I needed to ask for help, I had practiced in the years prior. I'd practiced asking for help and realizing that people want to help you. They just don't know that you need it. And I mean, imagine right now, Simon Sinek has a video about this, where he says, if I knew, like if you're a dear friend of mine, and I were to find out sometime later that you were struggling and you didn't invite me into that to be a part of that with you, Like, how dare you?
Mm.
How dare you assume that I wouldn't want to be in that with you? And so for me, it's just that reminder that people that love you want to support you. But if you don't let them know that you need them, they may not be able to be there the way that you need them to be. And you're missing out on an opportunity to build trust in that relationship, because when we ask for help, when we make ourselves vulnerable and we open up to another person, that's one of the ways that we build trust. Vulnerability is a trust builder in a relationship. And I didn't allow people to help me because I was too proud.
That's so interesting. And it's funny as you're saying that, it's like sometimes we're being selfish when we don't ask for help. And people think the opposite, right? They think they're being selfish if they ask for help, or I need someone to do this. And it's actually backwards. And I never really thought about that way. And I never really thought about the fact that you're right. Like everything else, it takes practice. And sometimes you just have to start small and do something that's like asking somebody to pick something up for you or whatever it is. But you're right. It does have to start small, and you literally have to build confidence with asking for help and getting support. I never thought about that way, but it's so many of these conversations come back to people being successful. They need the support. No one is superwoman. No one is doing this alone. And as women, we tend to just struggle with sometimes taking that first step and making that ask to all the reasons that you said. So starting small and kind of building into that to the fact that that was just your life. And then when you really needed it, it was probably a lot easier than to accept that help.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Yes.
crazy. So for a woman who's listening to this, who's feeling muted or disconnected or just really unsure how to come back, what's the first step, right? Like sometimes it can feel so overwhelming if you need to tackle all this. So how does somebody move forward and take that first step?
So there's a couple things that I like to invite people to do. And one is you have to kind of first feel the pain of staying the same and realizing that you don't want to stay in that spot anymore. Like it has to be an internal conviction. Conviction is what really gets us to make a change. So when I made the decision to work with a trainer, I felt so stuck that when I saw this door open of finding out who this person was working with, I felt like convicted that I have to take action. I can't stay here. So a couple questions I like to invite people to sit with, as opposed to being prescriptive and say, here's the 3 things you need to do. I'm more inclined to say, look within yourself, answer these questions, and these questions will guide you down the path that you need to go on. So the first is, what is one way you are currently feeling stuck or holding back or experiencing a doubt or stagnation of some kind in your life? One area, pick one, because we want to pick 17. We're like, let me fix it all at one time. Don't do that. Pick one and then ask yourself, what is the cost of staying where I am? So I ask myself, what's the cost of continuing to stay where I am, of feeling powerless, of not building strength and trust in my body? If I stay here, if nothing changes and I just keep doing what I'm doing, what's the cost a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? Is that a price I want to pay? So you get honest about that first. And most of us will say, no, I don't want to pay that price and that's too expensive. And so now I feel like I want to do something. The second question is, if it were just right, what would it look like? If it were just right, what would it look like? I guess it's more like the third question, but it's a question I learned from my dad. He calls himself the unstucker.
Love that.
So if it were just right, what would it look like? If it were just right, gosh, when I think about my own journey, I'd feel stronger. I'd feel more capable. I'd be lifting heavier things. I'd trust my body. I'd be in shape again. Oh gosh, once you paint a compelling enough vision of what the just right future looks like, that alone can start to move you toward it. That can start to motivate you to want to take action. And then the third step of what I take people through, or fourth step, I guess, I'm like getting the numbers here, is connecting to a sense of capability and possibility with inside of yourself. So for me, looking back on when I went through the burnout experience and identifying, hey, remember before when you went through this thing that you didn't know how you were going to get through and you got through it? You're capable. So sometimes we just need to look back. I call it the proof in our past. Look at the proof in your past of when you've been capable that you didn't think you could do a thing and you did a thing. Remind yourself, I am capable of doing hard things. And then at some point, make a decision for maybe whose belief do I need to borrow in this season? Whose accountability do I need? I'm really big on accountability. I can often forgo a commitment I make to myself if I'm the only one that knows about it. But if I have made a commitment to somebody else, I don't want to disappoint them. So my trainer would know if I went a week, if I saw her and then I went home for a week and I didn't work out. She's going to know. She's texting me and we're checking in with each other. And so get to know yourself in that way. What's the accountability that you need? Who's already where you want to be or who can help you get to where you want to be? Identify one person and reach out to them. You might have to pay them. Like, it's not just all free. Maybe it's a friend of yours, great. But maybe it's a coach or a trainer or somebody that you need to pay that's going to hold you accountable and help guide you through this to rebuild that trust in yourself. And then the final part of this is getting clear on, okay, what becomes possible in the best case scenario if I've taken action and that vision, the just right vision I have has come true. Let me imagine and like internalize it, make it visual, make it visceral. I've been doing a lot of meditating and kind of tapping into the power of the subconscious mind lately and just literally sitting with it, imagining it as if it already is. So you're sitting there visualizing, imagining yourself. I mean, I will visualize myself lifting a heavier deadlift than I can currently lift. And then I'm doing it confidently. I've imagined myself standing in Camden Yards in the field and looking out into the audience and finishing the anthem with my arms spread wide and a smile on my face. Like, literally get yourself into a position where you are visualizing and viscerally creating that experience as if you are already there, and allow yourself to go there. If it were just right, if this all works out in the best case scenario, what becomes possible for me and for the people around me? And if you go through that internal process, you will get to a place where you feel convicted and compelled to take action and do something.
Oh, that's a mic drop moment right there. That's amazing. Rachel, you're so amazing, and you truly are living a loud, unmuted, lifted life. So I'm so glad that we were able to connect and to hear your story, and can't wait to see the impact that you continue to make. And we definitely want to see the video from performance. It'll be amazing. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
The conversation with Rachel was such a powerful reminder that confidence is not something we just wake up with one day. We build it through movement, through consistency, through support, through keeping promises to ourselves, through doing the things before we fully believe we can. And I love what Rachel shared about confidence really meaning self-trust, because that's the piece so many of us miss. We think we need to feel confident first, but sometimes confidence comes after the reps, after the first walk, after the first lift, after the first ask for help. And Rachel's story is also such a beautiful reminder that being lifted is not always about pushing harder. Sometimes it's about letting people in, letting someone else believe in you until you can believe in yourself. That feels very loud and lifted to me. No one rebuilds alone. So if this episode connected with you, send it to someone who needs that reminder that they are stronger than they think, and that coming back to yourself does not happen all at once. Sometimes it starts with one small promise and then another. Until next time, stay loud, unmuted, and lifted.